The thing with antimatter is you have to either find it or generate it. That's what this bit does. Particle accelerator. In your time, generating antimatter costs a massive amount of money. This is progress. Things get smaller, faster and cheaper. This is like the iPhone version of CERN, accelerating enough particles to power the entire craft. The particle accelerator smashes the atoms together, like a little antimatter factory, to produce protons, which are then stored very carefully inside electric and magnetic fields. The protons interact with the fuel's materials to produce heat, which produces thrusts. It's beautiful. Antimatter powering the movement of matter, bringing protons into existence to move other forms of life across space. I love it, conceptually and actually. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Series 11 story, the Tsuranga Conundrum, written by Chris Chibnall and is directed by Jennifer Perrott. I believe I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's spelled Perrott. that kind of have a jiggle to it. But anyway, this is a proper classic Doctor Who kind of sci-fi, where it's a base under siege story. Our characters spend the majority in a small contained environment as a creature or creatures start attacking from nearly all sides of the area of the atmosphere. This story also has this really cool stylized white ship kind of look, which is very reminiscent of stuff like Star Wars and 80s Doctor Who, specifically the times of the Peter Davison era, where it has a lot of white corridors and a lot of white spacey rooms. Just the look of it is absolutely just absolutely brilliant, and it's a story which has had a lot of criticisms towards it, even from fans of the 13th Doctor era. Certain people don't like the kind of monster that they use. They don't like the setting, or they think the characters are a bit too much. There is a lot of characters for a one-part story. But, you know, I personally just had a lot of fun with this story. It's a lot of fun. Essentially, the start of the story, the Doctor, Graham, Ryan and Yaz, they're on a junkyard trying to track down something. I can't remember what it was, but they accidentally find a sonic mind bomb, and it activates and it puts them in severe damage, and they find themselves waking up in a Tsuranga hospital. And the Doctor's trying to get out of it, and she's meeting up with all of these other patients, and essentially she realises that she's on a ship being transported into Tsuranga's like main hub system. So they're 4 days away from the TARDIS, and it's here that we get introduced to a lot of characters. We got a lot of thing. It's a very classic style Doctor Who story, very reminiscent of like previous stories. If the rest of the series so far has been trying to establish a bold new era of Doctor Who, this is bringing it back more into the traditional sense of Doctor Who. It's a very based on the siege story. What's that one with the seaweed attacking in Patrick Troughton's story? It reminds me a lot of that. The name at the moment is elusive to me at the moment. So we've got like a bunch of secondary characters, so let's talk about them. The first one we're introduced to is Atos, played by Brett Goldstein. He has a very minor role as he gets killed earlier on in the episode. However, he has a very interesting, he's the leader of the crew. He is a doctor. The ship doesn't really have a crew. Everything's all automatic, so it's only really him and Mabel, played by Louise Chimblibra. It's spelled Chimimba. I'm sorry. I'm just going to call her Louise. And they're basically like the doctors of this hospital ship. And Atos, there's an interesting scene here, which a lot of people dislike. At least people I know dislike this story. A lot of people I haven't really much to talk about it, but I know a few people who dislike this scene, and I personally actually really enjoy it. It's a scene in which the Doctor, she's basically trying to get around the ship, and she's doing her absolute best to try to get the ship to go back so she can get her TARDIS. She is desperate to get back to the TARDIS, and she doesn't want to leave the TARDIS in a junkyard where scavengers can come and get it anyway. But Athos points out that, this is a ship with people who need medical help, and his job is to get to the medical facility where they can get treated as quickly and fastly as possible. And the Doctor doing this is doing what I think is not only distracting him from his work, but it's also endangering everybody, and is essentially making the Doctor a very selfish person. And after he kind of points this out to her, she is like, "You're right, I'm being selfish. I apologize, I'm sorry." And it's a very unusual moment where the Doctor starts apologizing to like another side of the main characters. And a lot of people didn't like this. They thought it was very undoctorly that the Doctor had to apologize. But I personally love it. It means that like the Doctor isn't like, she isn't perfect. She isn't this she's his to fault. She does make mistakes. She is selfish sometimes, and she can see that. And it's to this person that pushes her mindset into this. And even though it's a small scene, it does make the Doctor a better person by the end of it. And it's also something which characterizes her throughout the entire series. The Doctor is a character who is very self-absorbed sometimes. It's the Doctor. The Doctor. This channel's about Doctor Who, for crying out loud. So this is actually kind of like a little fun little character moment for the Doctor, and I absolutely love it. We also get Mabel. I believe it's pronounced Mabel. I can't remember how they pronounce it in the episode, but she is this trainee. She's a trainee. She's not very used to the danger. She's not very used to the experience of high pressure, and she starts panicking, and Louise does a very good job. There's these weird like bips on her eyes, so I'm suggesting that she isn't human, and she tries to basically get everybody on board after Athos dies, but she isn't very confident in herself. As she states at one part in the story, Athos was the only person who had any confidence in her, including herself, and it's up to really the Doctor and the rest of the TARDIS crew to gain that confidence back in her and let her take in charge in the way that she is responsible, but also, it handles it very well. And she builds up to the momentum, and she builds up to the occasion, and everything starts crashing down. And she's a very likeable character here. Then we get the Ciceros. Eve Cicero, played by Susanna Packer, and Dusky Cisco, played by Ben Bailey Smith. These characters, I think, are the weakest. Eve is this general character, a famous general in this army that have many adventures and stuff, and the Doctor's even heard of her, and she's also heard of the Doctor, saying that she's had a chapter in this historical moment in history, in one of the historical books. I can't remember what it's called. And there's this whole mystery surrounding her, with her assistant Ronan, played by David Shields, who is this android who has some of the best humor in the episode. And it's she's hiding something from her brother, and her brother's trying to find out. He's an engineer, and she kind of looks down at him for it. And she's a famous general, but she doesn't want to hide. She doesn't want people to know the certain fact about her health. Something called pilot's heart. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but essentially it means that her heart would give way if she goes piloting in a particular shipment that she travels in throughout the story. It's a part of the story I think is the most uninteresting, and the story does focus quite a lot in the episode. It's not that it's bad per se, it's just not that engaging. Though it does lead into some few interesting moments. There's a great bit where Graham interacts with the brother character, and he's maybe he's trying to get him to reveal some information about themselves, where it's we've all tried to broke into our loved ones' medical records. You can kind of feel that there's shady things going on between them, but he's kind of like trying to help them out. And Bradley Walsh here really owns those scenes. The last character that we really got to talk about is Yos, played by Jack Shalhoub. He is a Grafton, and he's on the ship because he is pregnant. In his species, basically the men can also get pregnant. The males give birth to boys and girls give birth to girls. And that's essentially like his thing, is that he's stuck there pregnant, and it also adds a layer of danger throughout the episode, as he is the most vulnerable, and he basically can't defend himself and is relying on other characters. This is where Louise's character helps him out and gives him the comfort, and there's a kind of small bond here, and there's also that leads into some really funny but also really interesting scenes. There's a great moment where Yaz and Ryan go to see him because they need to tell him that they're going to have a meeting in about 7 minutes, and he's showing them baby photos. Their species grow so that the pregnancies only last like a week before giving birth, and Yos is showing all of these pictures of the baby scans, and it's like 1 hour, 3 hours, the first day, and then it's like a fully grown baby. It's like 3 hours ago, and it's funny, and it's also like this kind of like strange, warming, like it's kind of like a nice sweet moment, that the baby, and it's also as well, Ryan also kind of connects with him, and has these kind of an emotional attachment to say, because as revealed in Arachnids in the QK in the last episode, that he has a distant relationship with his father. It's also as well stated at the end of The Woman Who Fell to Earth that Ryan has a distant relationship with his father, and Yos basically, he doesn't feel like he can be a father, so he was planning on giving up the baby, and this kind of hits Ryan hard. Now, this is where I think one of the big issues of the story is not really the companions per se, but how they're treated in terms of the narrative. Because in this scene, Ryan is explaining like his details and stuff to a particular character, and is getting that emotional hook that our audience needs for it. And Yoshin Toil really does a great performance here, but he's doing it to Yaz, and Yaz, so far through most of the series 11, is a character who's asking all of these questions, getting these characters to talk about their lives and their experiences, but she's rarely the character that actually has anything momentum in the narrative. She's mainly there for plot points rather than her being a part of the narrative, if that makes any sense. So let's get on to the villain of this story, because this is the kind of element that kind of makes or breaks it for audiences. Essentially, as the ship is traveling on its voyage to the main base of operations, the main Tsuranga 1 station, they get hit by what they first appear to be an asteroid. However, it seems to be a living creature that seemingly killed Assos after he went into a escape pod, and the system sound and malfunction as it's in the systems, and it took the life pod out and also exploded it, destroying it because it had no energy, and it's going around like destroying and seemingly eating the energy of the ship. And when they discover what it is a creature called a pating, which is about the size of that. It's like I don't know what, I'm not very good at heights. The size of my arm. It's the size of my arm. This small little, almost cute creature that everybody takes really seriously. And it's a really weird, it's really quirky. A lot of people kind of took it out of the episode. It's like they couldn't take the threat seriously when it's this cute, small, weird alien thing. It's literally like a small little animal thing. But personally, I absolutely love it. It changes the momentum of the story, which makes it very different to other classic bus stories based on deceased stories in Doctor Who's history. Like, when you think of this story, you think of the Pating and how it's just, like, causing loads of trouble. It's just a small little creature. It's like a little goblin thing. I love it. I also like how deadly it is as well. It's a seemingly immortal. They've never been killed or seriously injured in the history of what the ship knows anyway. Its skin is incredibly toxic. One touch could kill you if you touch it. And it seems to be unstoppable. It can only be stunned for a few minutes at the most. And it also, as well, can't die by lack of oxygen. It can survive in the depths of space. And, like, that puts so much tension on to the crew and to the creature. They can't even reason with it because it's not a speaking creature. It's like an animal just going around eating the ship. As we're trying to work out, like, what it wants. What is it doing here? And it's just it's like the way the story builds it up. Like, they have, like, that little presentation of it. I like it when the machine goes Pating, and then all the characters are like, Pating? Pating. And then it goes into detail about how, like, it's all violent and like blood sucking or something or not. But essentially what they learn is that it feeds off energy, massive amounts of energy, and it basically plans to just, like, eat as much energy as possible. And the Doctor comes up with a plan to use the ship's engines, which is, this ship is controlled by an antimatter factory machine, this weird, like, tube thing, which leads into the speech I gave into the start of this video. I personally, I don't know what it is, but I really love the way she explains it. Technobabble is something that the Doctor does all the time, probably in every story in Doctor Who's history. But it's something in the way that Jodie Whittaker delivers this line. This is probably one of my favourite 13th Doctor moments, and it's her just explaining the science of antimatter and how future technology evolves, leading into that awesome, like, it's beautiful, I love it, conceptually and actually moment. The way Jodie Whittaker performs it, the way the camera moves around her hands and her body and it's explaining it, you can clearly tell this is love, this is passion by the Doctor for science. Because we kind of forget that, though, you know, the Doctor does a lot of sciencey things, they do it because they absolutely love this, like, science. They absolutely adore science. They love engineering. They love scientific discoveries like this. And when she sees this thing and she's explaining it to Yaz, she's just the poetry of an entire anti-universe, antimatter, charging to create these protons, bringing these things to life so they can hurl life forms across all manners of space. And the Doctor just is absolutely in awe of it. I don't know what it is. And also Sigan Akinola's music here, sometimes it's distracting. Like, there's a scene where the Doctor and Astos, and later on with Louise's character, I'm not pronouncing the character's name anymore, I was struggling to remember how to pronounce it, but sometimes when they're talking, the music is constantly happening in this do-do-do-do-do. Not like that, but, like, you know, the music's kind of loud and it is distracting in terms of the dialogue. But there's certain moments, like in that scene, where Sigan Akinola absolutely hits the right beat in the episode, and I absolutely adore it. It's one of my top 10, maybe even top 5 favourite 13th Doctor moments. It's one of the reasons a lot of Doctors have a scene where I see it as like, right, that is the Doctor. That is their Doctor. A great example is Matt Smith, where he's holding the gun in Flesh and Stone, and he's doing that speech towards the Weeping Angels. This, to me, is the first 13th Doctor moment. I absolutely enjoy it. Absolutely. It fills me with so much glee watching. I don't know what it is. I think other people might watch this scene and might not even, like, register. They might just, like, pass them by. They might like it, or they might like it, but they might not, like, love it. But for some reason, for me, it just hits. It just hits there. I don't know what it is. I just absolutely love it. And the Doctor comes up with the realization, you know, the creature's after energy. So she's basically taken this bomb because the way the Tsuranga system is, it's detected that this little hospital craft has danger on it. It has a thing, and it's essentially going to send out missiles because the creature cannot enter the main station systems. They will eat and destroy an entire hospital worth of equipment and energy, which is vital for certain people's lives on that thing. So the Doctor takes the bomb that they were going to use, put it into the other shuttlecraft, other escape pod, and hopes that the thing goes into it, whilst Eve and her brother try and work out a system so that she can pilot the ship safely and quickly to the station as much as possible. This leads into Eve's death, to which her brother takes over, and the scene when the Doctor gets the thing on the shuttlecraft, on the escape pod, and it eats the bomb and explodes, and the face of the thing with it has absolutely, it's just an ecstasy of just how much it's enjoying the energy it is eating at the moment as the Doctor hurls it out into space, and it's just got a smile as it just flings off into space as it's eating up all of that energy. Just poetry, my dear boy. Absolute poetry. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And the story then ends with a character statement is like, right, we've organised you to have a teleport to get you back to the junkyard that you wanted to, so you could retrieve the TARDIS. But then there's this thing where they basically all have, I forgot to mention, Yosh does give birth, and he does keep it on thanks to his relationship with Ryan. And Ryan basically is like, you don't have to be perfect, you just have to be there for him. Obviously an emotional connection with Ryan there. And you know, there's so much more in this episode. There's so much more I've forgotten about this episode to mention. Anyway, just it's good. Highly recommended. The story ends with them basically doing this prayer where it's like, I can't remember what it is, but they do a chant for Eve as a sort of ceremony thing, leaving into a really nice shot where you hear the Doctor's voice is like, the travels from now till forever, so like it shows the outside of the space station. And that is the Tsuranga Conundrum. Overall, this story has a lot going for it. It also has a lot of weak elements. There is, of course, way too many characters. Not even like mentioning our 4 main protagonists. We also have 6 other characters, not including the main villain Bating. However, the small bust formula is very well utilised here. I personally enjoy the villain. I personally like at least most, maybe not all, but most of the supporting casts are very fun and very interesting and very just nice to hang around with. The setting's cool, the villain's cool. Has one of my favourite Jodie Whittaker moments. And Ryan and Graham has some really great scenes here. Yaz and Eve Cicero are the weak links in this story for me personally. But apart from that, I highly recommend this story. At least, I personally really enjoyed it. So anyway, that's the Tsuranga Conundrum. So join me next time where the Doctor goes to her somewhere, but Ryan has forgotten something, so they need to go back to retrieve it, only to discover that it's million years later, and there is a cult dedicated to one mighty being. So join me next time for The Good Doctor, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.